Hello, everybody. Welcome to Losing Friends. Turns out it's a really good thing to welcome you to, but that's what we're doing it on. I wanted to talk about abandonment today. Abandonment's huge in friendships. You either abandon them or they abandon you. And it's massive and it causes lots of heartache and pain and some anger too, actually. And a little bit of resentment too, because they treated you like this. So there's the two aspects. You can either abandon them because you can't do it anymore. There's some reasons you've abandoned certain people. And I've talked about that in the other podcasts where you can be abandoned. The abandonment is when people just basically leave you. That's what abandonment means. They don't go away and just come back. They just abandon you. They leave you. And abandonment has a really bad feeling. The feeling is that it wasn't resolved and you don't get a lot of closure around it. People just leave. Sometimes they'll tell you, your friends will tell you. Sometimes they won't. They just are gone. And so there's the two forms that they'll do. Abandonment feels very bad. It's like a massive form of rejection, actually, especially if you've invested a lot in the relationship. And it's worse when you don't see it coming. Sometimes you can get a feel around it, but sometimes it just comes out of left field and you don't. When my husband was dying of terminal cancer, we were in the last few probably weeks, days, and one of my best friends just sent me a text and wishing me luck with my life and just left. And so on the Wednesday I lost one of my best friends, and on the Saturday I lost my husband. And that abandonment that she did, the timing was so bad because I already wasn't in a good place, I suppose, and then I had the double of that. So the timing of the abandonment, it can actually really knock you over. For example, if you've got a situation where you've just been divorced and they abandon you, you lost your job, maybe you've got sick now and they've abandoned you because they don't want to deal with your sickness, they just want a healthy, happy you. And they've abandoned you because, like in my case, someone close to you has died. That abandonment really knocks you around because you are actually looking for support, you're needing more support, you're needing more love, and they just shut the door and walk away, shut up shop. The other thing is the abandonment that people can do emotionally. Sometimes they leave you physically and emotionally and all other ways. Other times they just abandon you emotionally. They don't want to help you with something, they won't talk about it anymore. They just change the subject. So you can get that abandonment. I think people who are going through grief have that. When the person first dies, they're listening, but they think you're going to get over it in 3 months or whatever. You want to bring it up again, they try to change the subject and they kind of abandon you emotionally. I want you to have a look at that because you've probably experienced that as well. Abandonment is common. It wrecks a lot of friendships. It ends a lot of friendships, actually. And there's a trust part of it. For example, if you've had someone abandon you, you will not trust them as much. You might go in again and try to fix it up, but there'll always be that little part of you that's not quite sure that they won't do it again. And I've had a couple of friends who've done it to me when I wasn't happy, wonderful Wendy, helping them with all their problems because I was in a bit of a mess for a while. They abandoned me, we came back together, and I would have done that, try again, but I felt the change and then eventually it didn't work anyhow. I still think it's worth trying, but it's a good friend because, we all muck up and we're all flawed and we're all doing our thing. We can all forgive each other. However, I feel once you've been abandoned twice, if you go in the third time, you're probably going to have a similar situation. It's like a personality trait they have. They just sort of walk away. And of course, there are times when you step back, and that's a healthy thing to do. And sometimes you even step out of the relationship. However, these people seem to, as soon as other people have problems or if they don't want to deal with you having a really hard time because they wanted you to be the support team and you can't because you're not in a place to support other people, they will just leave you. They'll just abandon you. People have this a lot when they have crisis in their life. That's the saying of you really find out who your friends are, and that's really true. I found when my husband died, all these people just exited. They're just gone and just waiting for me to get back to normal, and then they're going to come back in. However, that's the time you actually need people because you're struggling and I feel that's why abandonment can be so painful, because it's not at a time when you're in your best place. If you abandon people, if you're a person who does this, you might want to look at it, how you do it. I think there are times when there's nothing to say. You said it all, you just know it's finished. There's nothing really to say, and they won't hear anything you say, and you'll know those relationships. There's other times when it's good to explain why. I try not to hurt people's feelings if I have to end things, and I will probably just say we're on different paths now. That's how I feel, and that's actually true. Rather than say to them, something that might hurt their feelings, or not be a very positive thing to say about them or the relationship. You can't really tell people that they're narcissistic and selfish. They don't really like it. And I think this is something they've got to figure out for themselves. You've got to decide how you want to deal with your abandonment. You need to understand there's going to be a lot of emotional fallout. You're going to be hurt, a lot of emotional pain, a lot of heartache, quite a bit of anger because they've deserted you. And there's also going to be that resentment that they treated you like this, because if you've been the person who's been a very good friend and been through all their trials and tribulations, and then when yours start, they abandon you, you can feel quite differently about it. And then you'll have that trust thing. So I would let go of a lot of those feelings. You don't have to be with them to forgive them if you don't want to, but you can forgive them, and you could actually, at another time, if both of you are in agreement, try again. But you do need to understand that I possibly will abandon you again. And you have to work out whether you can weather another one of those. It's very hard. I've seen people do this in families too, where the mother got the new boyfriend and just abandoned the daughter and threw her out into the street. She's living in a car on a pension. She had nowhere to live. I've seen people do it. They will abandon for their own cause, and they will have no hesitation and will justify what they did. People also abandon people in work situations when they were supposed to do certain things and be part of the project. They just abandon and leave you to it, and you might have been friends with them. And there's a lot of abandonment within friendships. There really are. People just leave you, leave you for dead, as they say, and they do. Because if you've been the person who's doing most of the investment and now you can't invest as much, the relationship will wobble, because if you've been doing, say, 70% of investment, they've been doing 30. When you get sick or something goes wrong in your life and you have to deal with it, the 70% goes and the whole thing just falls over. That's kind of what happens. And I think you should realise that and have a look at that. And when you look back at people who abandoned you, you'll just see probably that you were doing most of it. That's what I saw. I was investing the most. As soon as I wasn't holding it up, it fell down, it fell over, and they didn't want to pick up and like do their part. People inherently look after themselves, and even though it's a good thing to look after yourself to some degree, in a relationship you're actually supposed to look after the other person too, not just yourself, and that's where you'll notice the difference. I'm really sorry if you've been abandoned. It's a terrible feeling. It's like super duper rejection, and it hurts like hell. And if you have abandoned other people, you might want to decide how you're going to deal with that. A few people I had to not be with anymore because they were toxic, very negative, they weren't good for my health. I said to them that I was sorry, but I couldn't be with you right now while you're like this. I was fairly honest, because I felt that that's how I am. It's just important to say it. But there are times when you'll just know there's nothing more to say. It's really done. And in a way, you've probably tried a lot of times. If you actually have a look, you'll see you try to fix it or put up with it or cope with it or tolerate it, and then you just sort of run out. So in a sense, you haven't abandoned it really. You stood there and stood there and stood there, and then you couldn't anymore. The abandonment comes at the end of doing a lot of work with those people. I hope you have less of these situations where you are abandoned, because it's painful. And I hope that you attract people who will talk it through or try and work and make a compromise. And that's what I want you to understand. If you've abandoned some people, it's because you realised there was no way to fix it anymore. You'd done everything and you ran out of options, basically, and it was up to them and they just wouldn't do it. And that's really the truth of it. I hope you have a good week, and I hope you have lots of loving people around you and lots of good friends who will stick by you when things go tough, because really they are the best, aren't they? I'm sending you lots of love this week.